You're now listening to an archive episode of Or So I Thought, back when the podcast went by a different name. I really hope you enjoy it, and please make sure to listen to our new stuff. So, after you're done here, just scroll up, pick a new episode, and press play. I'm a nice guy. I can't help it. It's haunted me my whole life. Did you catch the way that I said that? As if being nice is a disease to be avoided like the plague. For many of us, we grow up in a household where being nice is the biggest virtue. But then as you go through life, you start getting the feeling that you've entered a Twilight Zone episode almost, where up is down and down is up, and children go to work while the adults play with toys. Backwards stuff. It's a heated debate, and it's nothing new. On one side, you have a camp of people who say, nice guys finish last. And then you hear other people say stuff like, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. So, which one is it? We're going to tackle this specific topic now, with someone who's written a book about it. Is being nice gonna have us finishing last all the time? Are we just mislabeling what it means to be nice? And what happens when we stop giving a you-know-what? Today's guest is returning from last week. If you haven't checked out that episode where we discuss how she went about writing her first book, there's a lot of advice there for first-time authors, or just for anyone who wants to improve their life through writing. Today, we give you the prequel to that story, how she struggled in her life and how that forced her to find a different philosophy, the philosophy that became the thesis to her book.
I am the author of the international bestseller, The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck, how to stop spending time you don't have with people you don't like, doing things you don't want to do. And I'm also a freelance editor and writer under my own business, Sarah Knight Books.
Sarah Knight graduated with a dream to join the publishing world. That's where she wanted to work. And she put all her efforts and hard work into getting into the industry. She eventually landed a job with a literary agent and then worked her way up to being an editor at a major publishing house. She always considered herself a nice person, but at a certain point, that philosophy caused some struggles.
Probably reared its head about 6 years ago when I was working in a really difficult environment. I had a very difficult boss, and I was having panic attacks. I was just completely drowning in commitments. I was, just overcommitted, overdrawn, and I couldn't see my way out of it. And that was also just after I had planned and executed my wedding. And that was a very different environment, very different from the office environment, but that involved family and friends and lots of other people's opinions, with which I did not always agree. And I think that, it was a time in my life where I just finally had to say, you know what, I have to stop giving a fuck about X, Y, and Z, or I'm not gonna get through this. And so, I would look back at very specific situations, including, saying very firm no to my family and my husband's family about certain things they wanted out of our wedding. And that felt very liberating. And then moving on to leaving the job that I had been in with the boss that was causing me so much grief and getting a better job that was more comfortable. And, improving my life kind of slowly along that timeline.
So it was a slow process, but she started realizing that she was committing to too many things. She had been doing what a quote-unquote nice person does. They say yes. But now she was slowly learning to say no. And it was planting the seeds for her concept of having a fuck budget, which we'll talk about in a few moments.
But it was really last year when I finally quit the corporate life altogether that it really all came into it all crystallized. And I said, oh, yeah, no, I'm really winning here. Fewer fucks and a better life.
She put some more thought into it, and she was asking herself, why is it so difficult for many of us to say no? And then she realized that there are already three types of people who don't give a fuck.
So, in my view, the three types of people who don't give a fuck are children, assholes, and the enlightened. So, children don't give a fuck because they don't have to. The world's bullshit has yet to be heaped upon them. They can run around knocking things over and spilling and untying their shoelaces, and somebody's going to come around after them, picking things up and cleaning up after them and tying their shoes and sending them on their way. That's one way of not giving a fuck, because you haven't figured out yet that you need to give a fuck. Then there are assholes, and these are people who don't give a fuck, and by that I mean they don't care about things and they don't do things they don't want to do, but they do it in a rude or dishonest way. They do it in a way that hurts other people's feelings and that absolutely doesn't look out for their own relationships and maintaining relationships with friends and family and coworkers. Those people are assholes. So the third category are the enlightened, and that's the category that I belong to and that my book tries to teach you how to become. And the enlightened are people who have figured out how to not give a fuck, especially by practicing what I call my not sorry method, which entails being honest and polite, and therefore having nothing to apologize for. You haven't acted like an asshole, and you go on doing the things that you want to do with the people you want to do them with, and none of the rest, but you haven't hurt anybody's feelings, and nobody can call you an asshole.
So you see, it's not about being an asshole. It's about being enlightened. There does exist this third option, the enlightened ones, that give you the best of both worlds.
Well, one of the things that I recommend is doing a little bit of visualization. And, that's kind of a wink to the self-help genre as a whole, and kind of, telling people to sit down and visualize how you want your life to be and, and manifest it. But really, if we're talking about, for example, a coworker is having their birthday party on a Wednesday night after work at a karaoke bar. And, maybe you like your coworker, but you don't like them that much. You've already worked 9 hours that day. You don't want to go out, and you certainly don't want to do it at a karaoke bar. Say those are your criteria. Then you just say a timely, no, thank you, can't make it. And that's honest and that's polite, and everybody can go on with their day. When you say yes to something and then you bail out at the last minute because you never really wanted to go, that's impolite. That's rude. You've just set expectations and then you've undermined them, and that's not fair to the person who invited you. And if you say, oh God, no, why would anybody want to go to a karaoke bar with you on a Wednesday night? That's rude. That's an honest response, but it's impolite, and that makes you an asshole. So what I, have tried to get across in my book is that there is a way of thinking and acting that keeps you taking the high road all the way along. And I think that what has been so enlightening for readers is that they didn't think that they had the option to just say a polite no. That in your own head, you get this, what I call the anxiety, shame, guilt spiral. And you just start thinking of all of the repercussions and all of the consequences of you saying no and people not liking you and people being mad. But really, if you actually try it, and this is where the distinction between simple and easy comes in, I understand why you might think that doesn't sound very easy, but it is simple. It's very simple to just say an honest, polite no. And I claim that if you try that just once, you will see, oh, that really worked. And then you will try it again, and you will do it again, and it will become a thing that you now know how to do and that you feel comfortable doing.
To help the philosophy in sticking, she says it's useful to think of your cares in this world almost as a type of transaction.
So in the book, I define the concept of not giving a fuck. And I say, we all understand the colloquial definition of not giving a fuck to mean I don't care about that thing, right? I don't give a fuck about basketball. I don't watch basketball. I don't go to basketball games, whatever. But I also liken it to literally giving your fucks. And those are in the form of time, energy, or money, and sometimes a combination of those, to a thing that you don't care about. So when I started talking about it that way as I was writing the book, I said, if we all considered our time and energy as valuable as we consider the actual dollars in our bank account, And if we thought about them as a finite resource, as are the dollars in our bank account, then maybe we wouldn't be so quick to overcommit and, add too many things to our calendars and say yes to too many deadlines and do too many favors for too many people, because we would literally be overdrawn in the same way that we would if we got below zero in our bank account. So that's where the concept of the fuck budget comes in. And you just have to think about having a finite amount of time in any given day or week or month, and a finite amount of energy to expend, and a finite amount of money, and spending all of those things on the things that you really care about and that bring you joy, which is, another wink to Marie Kondo's book where she talks about only holding on to the possessions that bring you joy. But crucially, not doing the things that annoy, which is really my barometer for crossing things off of your fuck budget.
I think this is a great way of thinking about our resources. But let's be honest, nothing that is life-changing will come without some major trips and falls. Sarah learned this herself firsthand.
I did have a friend whose wife was very pregnant, and these are Jewish friends of mine, and I assumed that if they had a male child, they would be holding a bris, which is a traditional ceremony, and I don't go in for religious ceremony, and I was very concerned about upsetting my friend if he invited us to this imaginary bris that hadn't taken place yet. And so I sent him this long email just explaining how I wasn't, into religion, and it wasn't just him, but I wasn't going to go to these for any of my husband's family either, and blah, blah, blah. And I sent the message, and then the next day found out that his wife was literally in labor with their firstborn child. And I was like, I really should have just waited. I should have just waited until it came up. And as it turned out, they didn't even have the ceremony, or at least, they didn't have one that they invited lots of friends and family to. So, it was kind of a preemptive strike on my part that went a little bit sour, because I really had kind of trodden upon his excitement over having a child with my desire to, abandon my post as a guest at a religious ceremony that I didn't agree with. So that was something that I did long before I ever wrote this book, and then I went back to and thought about as a learning experience, and how could I have handled that differently so that I didn't feel bad about it. Because my not sorry method is about acting with honesty and politeness and not having to feel sorry because you haven't done anything wrong. And I do feel like I handled that situation poorly.
The problem here wasn't lack of politeness or lack of honesty. It was something else that we should keep in mind.
I think it was a timing mistake. I think that the actual email that I wrote to him was very polite and friendly and diplomatic, but I should have waited to get the invitation before saying no to it. It was awfully presumptive of me to think that, that was something that he needed to hear, during such a chaotic time in his life. So, that's what I would say, that was a timing mistake for sure.
So far, we've learned that not giving an F doesn't mean leaving politeness completely behind. They can and actually should coexist. And we learned that an F budget helps us make better decisions with our time, with our money, and our energy. In the final part, we'll learn about how to put this into action daily, and we discover some surprising aspects about human nature as it relates to this philosophy. If we're gonna get better at not giving an F, this is gonna require daily action.
My method and the not sorry method that I outline in the book will help you get to the point where you don't have a big purge that you have to do at any given time. But on a daily basis, I do have to remind myself, especially when it comes to work, because I do work for myself now. I own my own business and I'm my only employee. And so I have a hard time saying no when somebody comes to me with an editing job or a writing job, even though I'm already really booked. And I have to think, Sarah, you only have so much time. You only have so much energy. If you don't need this money in this month, you have to say no, because you have to protect your time and energy. And on the other hand, if you really need the money and it's worth it to sort of draw down on your time and energy account in order to get that money, then that's another conversation, to be had with yourself. But for me, it's really about I would say that the hardest fucks to stop giving for me have to do with work commitments. And, I've eliminated a lot of them now that I don't work for a corporate entity, because I don't have to go to meetings and I don't have to be on conference calls and I don't have to report to any superiors. But I still have to manage that for myself.
If you're looking for a good place to start when it comes to getting quick wins, then look no further than that thing you do many times during the day. I usually do it 5 times, maybe 6. Some people once an hour, some every 10 to 15 minutes.
I am pathologically responsive to email. I always have been. It was something that I just felt, I had to stay on top of, and all the time that I was working in the publishing industry. And now that I work for myself, I've given myself permission to wait a day or sometimes 2 before responding to anything that is making a request of my time, energy, or money. And that's something that I think it goes in with what I said before about just take a minute and visualize, how are you going to feel if somebody invites you to this thing? How are you going to feel the night of that thing? Before you RSVP yes, think about what you're going to feel like when you're sipping warm Coors Light out of a pitcher and listening to your coworkers, murder an AC/DC song at karaoke on a Wednesday night, when you could be home, get a good night's sleep, and being fresh for tomorrow. Really picture it and think about the consequences before you RSVP, and then be honest and say, no, I can't make it. And so that's something that I do on a daily basis now with my emails when people write to me and are basically asking something of me, instead of immediately trying to get that email out of my inbox by responding, when I used to do this all the time, just say yes to everything and then just work it out later. Now I really think, do I have the time? Do I have the energy? Do I have the money? And I wait a day or 2, and then it feels a little bit more clarified in my own mind. And sometimes I say yes, and sometimes I say no.
Since we're laying it all out on the table, full honesty, my fear in saying no is that I'll lose friends, that people just won't like me. It's in our nature to want to be liked, and that's always caused a bit of hesitation with me when it comes to giving less Fs. But what Sarah says next actually lifted a big weight off my shoulders. It's something we might not realize about human relationships.
I think it's important that we all act with honesty and politeness and be a little bit more selfish about guarding our time and energy for the people and the things that we love. And you might find out, as I did, that when you stop making a huge effort to accommodate certain difficult people in your life, they stop asking, or they stop being part of your life. And maybe it's because they didn't really want to be friends with you either. I think it goes both ways. I think that we waste a lot of time and energy faking it with people. And it may turn out that you both just have a lot more time and energy now for other people in your lives that you like better, because you stopped, trying to do this dance of, oh, we should get together. Oh, let's put a date on the calendar. And then the day comes and one of you cancels, and then you try again, and then the other one cancels. I mean, I think we've all been in those relationships. And there are a few people that I think I've kind of lost touch with as a result of my unwillingness to engage in that sort of theater anymore, but I don't consider it a loss, and I'm not sad about it, and I don't think they are either.
So you can stop worrying that you'll lose friends if you start giving less Fs. Since our Fs are limited, we should be more selfish with them, as Sarah says. But, like all good things in life, it doesn't come free. We'll have to make up for it by being more polite and more honest. That's the only way to become enlightened. After all, I wouldn't want niceness to haunt you like it's haunted me my whole life. Until today, that is.
If you are interested in becoming somebody who gives fewer better fucks, and you want to read The Life-Changing Magic of Not Giving a Fuck, you can find it anywhere books are sold. You can find it at Amazon and Barnes & Noble and your local independent bookstore. You can find it in ebook, and you can download the audiobook, which I narrated myself. So you can just listen to my mellifluous voice for another 4 hours, instructing you on how not to give a fuck.
What's About You is supported by FreshBooks. Here's the thing. I can spend hours and hours producing podcasts, but when it comes to invoicing, I can't bear to do it for more than a minute. With FreshBooks, it only takes me 30 seconds to create a professional-looking invoice, so I can get back to doing what I love to do, podcasting. FreshBooks even gives your clients tons of ways to pay online by card, so no waiting for the proverbial check in the mail. Go to freshbooks.com/wits to get a free 30-day trial. That's freshbooks.com/WITS and write Wits About You in the How Did You Hear About Us section. You've been listening to Wits About You. You can learn more at witsaboutyou.com. My name is Alex Cespedes. Thanks for listening.